Lord Shiva, foolish persons either laugh at him or profitlessly try to imitate him. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Nananjana Shalakya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're again, we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 14, and today we will be reading texts 27 and 28. These are pretty interesting verses, and once again, introspect into the role of Lord Shiva and the great enigma that accompanies this great personality. So we'll talk a little bit about Lord Shiva, his qualities, and some of the seeming contradictions, and more than the contradictions, more the enigma that surrounds him. So it may be a little long. I might get a little into the details, some of his pastimes. So please bear with me as we get through this. So the title of this chapter is The Pregnancy of Diti. Specifically, this chapter is about Vidura continuing to ask, his sincerely asking why the Supreme Lord, in the form of a boar, is fighting with Hiranyaksha. And so the great sage Maitreya is recounting the genesis of Hiranyaksha from the word, or the genesis of Hiranyaksha from the womb of Diti. And who is she? She is the daughter of the Prajapati Daksha. And he also is the wife of the great sage Kashyapa Muni. Now, Kashyapa Muni, as you know, is also the son of the great Marichi, right? So all great personalities that we're talking about here. So interestingly, the question arises, where does Lord Shiva feature in all of this? And in the last few verses of this chapter, Kashyapa Muni is advising his wife, Diti, to hold off on her intent or intense urge to engage in conjugal coitus with him. So he cautions her, that the time of the day is inappropriate, it's inauspicious, being the evening. And that's when ghosts and spirits, are going about. That's their time. They're out and about and they're preying on human beings, vulnerable ones. And moreover, in this case, they're also following the Lord, right? Who can, and when we say the Lord, we're talking about Lord Shiva here, right? And Lord Shiva can see, he's Trilochana. In other words, he can see the past, he can see the present and the future, which means that even Lord Shiva can see them, right? So this is pretty embarrassing. And to make things even more embarrassing, Lord Shiva is not only Lord Shiva as Trilochana, but he is also the brother-in-law of Sati. Sati has 12 other sisters. And those sisters were all married to, mother. So Sati had, other sisters who were married to Kashyapa Muni. They were all given in marriage to Kashyapa Muni by Daksha. Sati, on the instance of Lord Brahma, was given in marriage to Lord Shiva. Okay, so did I get that wrong? So Diti's brother-in-law is Lord Shiva. So just to get it straight, Diti and her sisters were married to Kashyapa Muni, and Diti's sister Sati was married to Lord Shiva. Now, like I said, Lord Shiva, Sati was given in marriage to Lord Shiva on the instance of Lord Brahma to Daksha. So Daksha always looked at it as, as a favor that he was doing to Lord Brahma or even to Lord Shiva for that matter, right? So now on the topic of ghosts, I know we don't want to talk about ghosts now. This is not the best time. We never want to talk about ghosts, but in any case, in this case, who are, ghosts are generally apparitions. They're bodiless. They have no bodies. They're just floating. They're just spirit souls that are completely lost, right? Souls that are lost, and for various reasons. It's commonly believed that these spirit souls or these lost souls are souls that have ended their life in the material body due to some untimely death. It could be an accident, could be a homicide, it could be any of those. So these souls are generally floating around. They still, they don't have any bodies left, and they still have time left, in there, and they're looking for bodies to enjoy with because they still have a lot of desires. They still have a lot of material desires. So therefore, these spirits are going about creating all kinds of disturbances, right? Some are peaceful, some are, called poltergeists, which create very painful disturbances for living entities, right? Moving things, hurling things at people, causing accidents, things like that. Anyway, so like I said, due to their untimely death, they're forced to leave their material bodies without fulfilling their material desires. So these spirits are then looking for vulnerable material bodies so that they can enjoy their desires and fulfill their desires. And they follow Lord Shiva, who out of his compassion redirects these lost souls, as Prabhupada says, redirects these lost souls into the wombs of vulnerable women. Women that have, lusty or lustful desires, for bodily satisfaction. And that too at the most inappropriate time. So these spirits basically prey on these vulnerable living bodies for their own enjoyment. And when you have a situation where there are lustful desires that are present both in the man and the wife, and you have these wandering spirits in proximity, then it creates a perfect storm. Perfect storm in the creation of, a living entity that is nothing but a disturbance to the world. So now you see where Maitreya Muni is going with all of this, right? He's giving Vidura and all of us a clear understanding as to how the sons of Diti, right, were born and how they came to be. And one of the two sons, the sons were Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. So in this case, we're talking about, from the previous chapter about Lord Varaha, who lifted the earth from the waters, from the muddy waters, and then went on to kill Hiranyaksha, one of the two sons of Diti. So, and therefore, the discussion of Lord Shiva is about how he's so compassionate towards ghosts and spirits and all of these ghosts and these scary bodies here. Scary entities. It's actually it's a caution for all of us in this case, because sexual gratification outside of spiritual injunctions, right, is very, very, very dangerous. As we can see with what Hiranyaksha does and what Hiranyakashipu does. I mean, you see all of these demons that come into being and they create such massive disturbances to all the other living entities. But Srila Prabhupada also clarifies the higher purpose of Lord Shiva, right? In these purpose, he says that the real purpose of Lord Shiva is to serve the soul of the soul. The soul being the capital S, Lord Krishna, right? Soul with a capital S. So in this case, not in this case, but Lord Shiva's real purpose is to serve the soul of the soul, Lord Krishna. Now, Lord Shiva is a super exalted personality, and he should be respected as Lord Vishnu. As you know, several of our acharyas have said, our scriptures say that exalted personalities, including Vyasadeva and Sukadev Goswami, Sutta Goswami, all of them say the same thing, that he is the greatest personality in this material world. He's almost, practically on the same level as Lord Vishnu. He is not Lord Vishnu, but he is practically on the same level as Lord Vishnu and should be respected as such. It is through Lord Shiva that Vishnu actually engages, with the material energy in the creation and destruction and so on. But one thing we need to remember is that neither he, Lord Shiva, nor Vishnu are touched or impacted or affected by the material energy. And moving on to, some of the qualities of Lord Shiva, Lord Shiva is also known by several different names, basically, talking about his qualities, basically describing his qualities as Mahadev, for instance. Mahadev. Shiva is referred to as Mahadev, meaning great God. And this title emphasizes his superior and supreme transcendental nature. He's also known as Nataraja. We'll hear a little more about that, in this discussion. Shiva is often referred to as the Lord of Dance, or Nata Raja, the King of Dance, the Lord of Dance. His cosmic dance is known as Tandava. We all know that, right? We refer to as Shiva Tandava. I've got notifications coming here. Let's turn them off. Yeah, and so that symbolizes the rhythm of creation, preservation, and destruction in the universe. He is also known as Arthanareshwara, and that is the aspect of Shiva that represents both the masculine and the feminine aspect, where half his body is depicted as a male, Shiva, and the other half as female, Parvati or Shakti. And what does that symbolize? That symbolizes, the unity and the balance of opposites. And he's also known as Ashutosh, one that is pleased very easily. One that is pleased very easily. He is very quick to grant boons to his devotees. And that's also one of the reasons why, in the pastimes that we hear, a lot of these demons are advised to go to Lord Shiva, not to Lord Vishnu, for achieving, or getting the benedictions that they're looking for. Usually it is for material desires. And Narada plays a very important role in that as well, in terms of directing these demons towards Lord Shiva for a specific reason, so that there could be a fulfillment of the pastimes, as to when Krishna can come and kill these demons. So it's all a part of the plan, the supreme plan. Shiva is also referred to as Rudra. And this aspect of Shiva is associated with fierce and destructive forces. And Rudra is depicted as, as a very fierce deity wielding weapons and surrounded by storms. It's a very intense kind of a figure. He's also referred to as Nilakanta, the churning of the milk ocean, when no one was prepared to Shiva stepped up, stepped forward, and drank up the poison. It was an ocean of poison. It was not a single drop, which in itself is bad. This is an ocean of poison that came about when the churning of the milk ocean happened. So the Devas and the Asuras, they were after the ambrosia, but not. They didn't want to have anything to do with the poison. And so no one stepped forward. They didn't know what to do because all the poison came to the top with all that churning that happened. And Shiva was requested, and Shiva was the one who went forward selflessly, fearlessly, while others watched in total trepidation. And so his throat turned blue. That's why he's known as Neela Khanta. Neela is blue, Khanta is throat. He's also referred to as Bholinath because Shiva is known for his simplicity, his innocence. He's a very simple person. There is nothing in one time. So I know, ironically, we're talking about the enigmatic personality of Shiva, but at the same time, he is also described as Bholinath because that's one of his qualities. He's a very down to earth, very simple person, and he's Trilochana, which we mentioned earlier, which is he can see not only the present, he can see the past, and he can also see the future. So that way, he can see beyond the physical realms into realms of wisdom and insight. So there are a lot of good qualities of Lord Shiva. And again, this is just scratching the surface just to give us an idea as to who Lord Shiva is. And, some of the things that he does and, his actions, it can add some color to it and give us a little more insight into why, people give him, the great acharyas and the great personalities, call him by these wonderful names like Nilakanta, like Ashutosh, like, Trilochana and so on. Now, it is said that Lord Shiva is the best of all devotees. Therefore, all devotees of Lord Krishna are also devotees of Lord Shiva. Now, a devotee of Lord Krishna does not see Lord Shiva as a supreme personality of Godhead, but instead offers all his or her respects to Lord Shiva as one of the greatest devotees of Krishna. So, consequently, a devotee worships Lord Shiva with the intent to achieve the favor of Krishna. Right? So he wants Shiva as a devotee because Lord Shiva is so close to Krishna. So he is, a devotee is praying to Lord Shiva to enable, to request, to beg for that special favor so that when Lord Shiva can take that recommendation or recommend that devotee to Lord Krishna, then Krishna will favor the devotee easily. Now, Lord Shiva is also described in the Brahma Samhita by Brahma himself. It goes like this: Dhiram yadadadi vikara vishesha yogat sanjayate nahi tata pritagasti hetu yah sambhutam api tata tam paiti karya govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. So that's something that we hear quite often about how Shiva and Vishnu are the same and at the same time they are different. Just as milk changes into yogurt when mixed with the yogurt culture. But actually, yogurt is constitutionally nothing but milk. Similarly, Govinda, the supreme personality of Godhead, assumes the form of Lord Shiva for the special purpose of material transactions. And so Brahma says, I offer my humble obeisances to Lord Govinda and so on. So Lord Shiva is the supreme personality of Godhead in the same sense that yogurt is also milk. And And although at the same time it is not milk, it's a different state. Now, these are all the enigmas that we're covering as a part of this discussion. So I hope you're tracking with me, and we can see a few more and talk about a few more of these enigmatic pastimes and qualities of Lord Shiva. Now, another enigma of Lord Shiva is, why is Lord Shiva compassionate to these ghosts? Why is he associated with these ghosts and spirits and all of this scary stuff that we want to stay away from? Right? Why is his body covered? Why does he cover himself with ashes? Why does he have all of these snakes wrapped around his neck? So why are these people, in totally in the mode of ignorance there, in his presence? Why was he favorable to Ravana? Why did he even give a benediction to Banasura, knowing that he was, knowing his intentions? Like we know, Lord Shiva knows everything. So, however, in the purport in the fourth canto, which we can read here quickly, Prabhupada writes from this verse, it appears that Lord Shiva blesses the Asuras simply for the sake of formality. But actually, he loves one who is devoted to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, I'm just going to read a little bit more in terms of, the descriptions that Prabhupada expands about Lord Shiva. He says, it is said, Vaisnavanam Yatha Shambhu. Lord Shiva is the best of all devotees. Therefore, all devotees of Lord Krishna are also devotees of Lord Shiva. In Vrindavana, there is Lord Shiva's temple called Gopishwara. The gopis used to worship not only Lord Shiva, but Katyayani or Durga as well. But their aim was to attain the favor of Lord Krishna. So a devotee of Lord Krishna does not disrespect Lord Shiva, but worships Lord Shiva as the most exalted devotee of Lord Krishna. Consequently, whenever a devotee worships Lord Shiva, he prays to Lord Shiva to achieve the favor of Krishna, and he does not request material profit. Let me make sure that you can see it. I know I've been reading from my notes here, but let me know if you can also see it. Yeah. Consequently, whenever a devotee worships Lord Shiva, he prays to Lord Shiva to achieve the favor of Krishna, and he does not request material profit. In Bhagavad Gita 7:20, it is said that generally people worship demigods for some material profit. Kames tais ter srita jnana prapadyante nyadevataha. Driven by material lust, they worship demigods. But a devotee never does so, for he is never driven by material lust. That is the difference between a devotee's respect for Lord Shiva and an Asura's respect for him. Here's the key. The Asura worships Lord Shiva, takes some benediction from him, misuses the benediction, and ultimately is killed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who awards him liberation. Because Lord Shiva is a great devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he loves all the devotees of the Supreme Lord. Lord Shiva told the Prachetas, we hear about how the Prachetas meet Lord Shiva. Prachetas are the sons of Pracharavini. And basically, Lord Shiva tells them, here's how you need to and you should glorify the Supreme Personality, Govinda. So that's a beautiful chapter, a string of verses where it's called the Song of Lord Shiva in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And Lord Shiva basically instructs the Prachetas. So here, Lord Shiva was not kind and merciful only to the Prachetas. Anyone who is a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very dear to Lord Shiva. Not only are the devotees dear to Lord Shiva, but he respects them as much as he respects the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Similarly, devotees of the Supreme Lord also worship Lord Shiva as the most dear devotee of Lord Krishna. They do not worship him as a separate personality of Godhead. It is said in the list of Nam Aparas that it is an offense to think that the chanting of the name of Hari and the chanting of Hara or Shiva are the same. The devotees must always know that Lord Vishnu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and that Lord Shiva is his devotee. So devotees should be offered respect on the level of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and sometimes even more respect. Indeed, Lord Rama, the Personality of Godhead himself, sometimes worshipped Lord Shiva. If a devotee is worshipped by the Lord, why should a devotee not be worshipped by other devotees on the same level with the Lord? This is the conclusion. From this verse, it appears that Lord Shiva blesses the Asuras simply for the sake of formality. Actually, he loves one who is devoted to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Interesting, huh? So, the churning of the milk ocean is another interesting pastime, right? So talking about some of the other enigmas, and like I mentioned before, all the other devas and the asuras were completely panic-stricken, when they saw all of this poison, the ocean of poison coming to the top as they were churning the milk ocean. They didn't want to go anywhere close to it, and they didn't know how to get rid of it. And Lord Shiva stepped up. And Parvati Devi was so confident that her husband could pull it off. So she didn't stop him, and instead she encouraged him bravely. And Lord Shiva fearlessly, selflessly, drank up all of that poison. Now, we also hear about pastimes where Lord Shiva actually fought with Krishna and Balaram, in support and in favor of Banasura. It's kind of shocking. Here we're saying that Lord Shiva is the greatest devotee of Krishna, but at the same time, Lord Shiva has also battled with Krishna and Balaram. Now, Srila Swami says that he did this only to glorify. He knew very well. He was completely aware who Krishna is and the greatness of Krishna, but he did that only to glorify Krishna. This is Krishna's pastime. Then there is this other encounter where, a pastime where King Chitraketu was traveling in, his celestial plane over Mount, I believe it was the Sumeru mountain. And as he's passing by, he looks down and he notices that Lord Shiva is sitting there and with his wife, Parvati Devi, on his lap, and sitting there in the presence of all of these exalted sages. So he's completely taken aback, and Chitraketu laughs very loudly. And when he does that, Parvati notices that. He gets very, very offended and angry, and so she curses him. She curses Chitraketu and says, "You're going to take birth. You have to take birth as come back to earth, not just as a human being, but as an asura." So he comes back. Chitraketu, in fact, takes birth as Vritrasura as we know it. Now there's an equally enigmatic encounter, which I completely, I was so absorbed. I've been reading the Skanda Purana, which is all about, the glorification or the glories of Lord Shiva lately. I've been reading from there. And, there are a lot of different pastimes of Lord Shiva, glorifying his qualities and so on. And so one such one, which is of significance, which I'd like to, try and cover today, and in some amount of detail, is about how Lord Shiva and Daksha have this pastime. So, like I said earlier, Sati, also known as Dakshawani, Dakshawani being, the daughter of Daksha. And on the instance of Brahma requests Daksha, for whatever reason, to give his daughter in marriage to Lord Shiva. And so Daksha does that. And so fast forward, right? Daksha is a great Prajapati. And one day he, enters the forest of Naimisharanya and he sees all these exalted sages performing sacrifices. And when he enters the sacrificial arena, he is honored. He's honored and people pay respects. Now, in that audience is also seated Lord Shiva, his son-in-law. Now, Lord Shiva at that point in time is in great absorption as the sacrifices are happening, right? He's got his eyes closed and he's in complete meditation. He's like in samadhi. So he doesn't move, what to speak of, getting up and offering his respects to his father-in-law or to Daksha. So Daksha he takes notice of that and he gets completely, upset. He's like, how dare you, person with no clothes, who lives like a recluse, with spirits and, living in visiting cemeteries and so on. A person like you, you're sitting in this wonderful audience, in the wonderful presence of such exalted sages and personalities who are offering me respect, but at the same time, you don't have the courtesy to even stand up and, offer me your respects. And I am your father-in-law. And curses Lord Shiva. He, in fact, curses Lord Shiva, but Shiva remains very, very calm. He bans Shiva from, attending any of the sacrifices going forward. He says Shiva is not to be entertained. But Shiva just remains calm. He remains calm. He remains, he's not emotionally upset or moved by Daksha's words. But then Nandi, who's also there, so when Shiva goes, he also takes with him his entourage as well, and he has a pretty large entourage now. Among the entourage that he has, Nandi is his chief supporter, right? His big devotee. And so Nandi gets very, very, very upset, and he counter curses Daksha. And he says, how dare you say something like this to Lord Shiva? You don't even know who he is. And he curses Daksha and the Brahmanas who are present there as well and says, see, you people going forward will continue to stay impoverished and, and you will continue to do your sacrifices, but you will bear no benefit because you're only performing these sacrifices with lustful material desires. So you will always remain greedy for money. You will always, go after material, the fulfillment of material desires through your sacrifice. So he makes a pretty intense counter curse, and Shiva calms him down and says, Nandi, relax. Who are you? Who am I? Who are all of these living entities? We are nothing but parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of God. So he puts things in perspective and he calms Nandi down. But Daksha is still pretty livid. He's pretty livid. He goes home and he doesn't forget that, he was offended by Shiva, that Shiva had, not offered him the respects that he was expecting. Now, fast forward. A little later, Daksha holds a great and grand sacrifice. And to that sacrifice, he invites all of these wonderful personalities, great personalities, including Lord Vishnu. And Vishnu comes there only on the request of Daksha, otherwise, and of course, Vishnu is the Yajna Purusha, right? So he's there. But Daksha consciously does not invite Lord Shiva, his own son-in-law, and his daughter, Sati, whereas he invites all his other daughters and Kashyapa Muni and all of them, and he does not invite Lord Shiva. So in the course of conversation, Sati recognizes that she and her husband were left out from the invite. So she goes to Lord Shiva and says, "This is not right. I don't know why my father did this, but I don't like it. I think we should go because it's a big sacrifice and we should be there for those sacrifice. I mean, at the sacrifice, to perform those sacrifices along with all of the other exalted personalities." Lord Shiva says, "Just relax. You're only going to go there and you're going to get humiliated. You're going to get insulted. We don't want to do that. When you go uninvited to any place, you will have to bear the consequences." But Sati is all fired up. She says, "No, I know my father. I have to go." And so she goes against the advice of Shiva. And when she goes there, obviously, Daksha, just like Shiva said, he insults her, he humiliates her, and he says all kinds of things about Lord Shiva being this, being that. He's constantly engaging with these spirits and goals and things like that. So, and he's in the most inauspicious of places. He smears his body with ashes and all of these snakes and serpents around his neck. I mean, he's who would want to associate with him? And he associates with such terrible entities. I only gave you in marriage to him only because Brahma requested me to do so. So Daksha tells Sati that. And he doesn't stop at that. In fact, he even incites Sati, his daughter, and he says, "Yeah, you should leave your body. Why are you even living this life? Why are you living with this man?" So she gets so angry, so angry. She says, "I do not want to hear anymore." And she thinks about, what Shiva had told her as well. So it's like, how can I go back when I disrespected, I didn't listen, I didn't heed the advice of my own husband, Lord Shiva. It was such a great, great, great personality. How am I going to even show my face? So after all this has happened. So she enters the fire. And that's also one of the reasons why she's called Sati. She enters the fire and gives up her body. Now, the news reaches Lord Shiva. He's sitting in Mount Kailash and he gets so angry at this point in time. Now, it's like this is his wife, Sati, who's been, who takes to this sacrifice, who enters the fire. So he's completely upset at that point in time. And so he just pulls his hair and few strands of his hair, his matted hair, fall on the ground, and from that comes a very fiery demon, by the name of Veerabhadra. And Veerabhadra is like really a scary demon. That so Veerabhadra basically asks Lord Shiva, Lord Shiva, and says, "Ask me what you want me to do, and it shall be done." It's almost like, the genie, right? And so Lord Shiva says, "Go and completely destroy the sacrifice that Daksha is conducting." So off Veerabhadra goes with, thousands of his followers, thousands of Lord Shiva's followers who are also partaking in this whole, effort to destroy the sacrifice of Daksha. So they go to the sacrificial arena and they wreak havoc. And the devas and all the brahmanas there, there are siddhis there, there are charanas there. I mean, all the great personalities are there. Lord Vishnu is there as well. And these, followers of Lord Shiva, they are pretty scary. I mean, they all have 5 heads, they have 3 eyes, they have, five, they have so many arms, they have serpents around them, their throats are blue. I mean, they look pretty scary. They look pretty scary. And Veerabhadra himself, he is the scariest of all of them. He has 5 heads, he has 1,000 arms, and he has all of these serpents crawling all over his neck and his shoulders. He's massive, he's huge, he looks virtually indestructible. So they go about, completely destroying that entire sacrificial arena. And Daksha pleads to Lord Vishnu. He says, Lord Vishnu, please help. What is happening? How can you let this happen? You're the Yajna Purusha. You're seeing all of this happen. And this is happening only on the instructions of Siva. How can this happen? So Lord Vishnu looks at Daksha and says, you totally deserve it. You shouldn't have disrespected someone like Siva in the first place. So, I don't think there's much I can do here, and I don't want to do much here. And so Daksha becomes very, very silent, and he's like, what do I do now? What do I do now? He's in total anxiety. And in the meanwhile, Veerabhadra and his followers are going all over, just breaking everything down, tearing everything down. And the devatas are all fleeing at this point. Even Indra tries to come in, and Indra is knocked down. And so Indra is also no match for Veerabhadra. Veerabhadra is supremely massive and indestructible. And so then Vishnu enters the fight. He says, because Vishnu enjoys, fights that are worthy of fighting, right? So he enters, and then he and Veerabhadra have a chat. And in fact, Vishnu, before he starts the fight, he says, Veerabhadra, what are you doing here? Why are you here? So Veerabhadra says, I'm here to serve my master, Lord Shiva. And he pays his obeisance to Vishnu because he knows who Vishnu is. So he pays his obeisance, and he said, we are servants of Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu. So Vishnu says, no, but I command you, you should fight me. And, has a phenomenal fight with Veerabhadra. And it goes on to a point where Krishna or Vishnu is feeling the might of Veerabhadra. He's a worthy opponent. And so he releases the Sudarshan Chakra. The Sudarshan Chakra goes flying, and just goes right into the mouth of Veerabhadra. And doesn't just stay there, but it actually cuts and comes out of his mouth and comes right back into the hands of Vishnu. So at that point, Vishnu says, okay, I've had my fight. I'm good. I'm going to go back. So he returns to his abode. But Veerabhadra is not done yet. He's not. He's still going about, and he seeks out Daksha and just chops his head off, takes his head and throws it into the sacrificial fire. So Daksha falls to the ground, lifeless. Meanwhile, Brahma is seeing all of this. The devatas are all, they see all of this happening. They're completely petrified. And so they go running to Brahma and say, Brahma, please help. Vishnu has also gone back. Can you please help us? And so Brahma is looking at all of this and saying, oh my God, what did I do? What did I do? What have I got myself into here? And so Brahma then goes running to Mount Kailash and begs for forgiveness from Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva is very peaceful by that time, and he says, this person deserved it, Daksha, for being so ridiculously, proud. So in any case, I will come with you. And so the two of them go to the sacrificial arena where all of this confusion, this chaos is happening. And so Veerabhadra comes, offers his obeisances, and then, he tells, so Shiva asks Veerabhadra, okay, so where is Daksha? Oh, I severed his head off. Uh-oh. And not only severed his head off, but I even threw his head in the sacrificial fire. So then Shiva says, okay, I'll bring him back to life. Find me a head. So he not only brings Daksha back to life, but all that Veerabhadra could find at that point in time is the head of a goat that was probably used in the sacrifice. And so Shiva puts the head on Daksha's body and brings it to life. And that's why you see the re-entry of Daksha. He goes out in Canto 4, I believe, comes back in Canto 6, but this time with a goat head. So these are some very, very, very interesting pastimes of Shiva. But see the difference when you contrast this encounter with Daksha, Lord Shiva's encounter with Daksha, as opposed to his encounter with Chitraketu. Srila Prabhupada says, and I'm going to read it, Chitraketu appreciated the exalted position of Lord Shiva, and therefore he remarked at how wonderful it was that Lord Shiva was acting like an ordinary human being. He appreciated Lord Shiva's position, but when he saw Lord Shiva sitting in the midst of saintly persons and acting like a shameless, ordinary man, he was astonished. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur remarks that although Chitraketu criticized Lord Shiva, he did not offend Lord Shiva like Daksha. Daksha considered Lord Shiva as insignificant, but Chitraketu expressed his wonder at Lord Shiva's being situated in that way. So yeah, that's an interesting contrast there. And just moving on. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam in Canto 8, Chapter 7, again, there Prabhupada also says, not Prabhupada, it is also said that exalted self-satisfied persons who preach to the entire world think of your lotus feet constantly with their hearts. But when persons who do not know your austerity see you moving with Oma, they misunderstand you to be lusty, or when they see you wandering in the crematorium, they mistakenly think that you're ferocious and envious. Certainly, they're shameless. They cannot understand your activities. So yeah, Lord Shiva is such an enigmatic person. People very easily misunderstand Lord Shiva and his role, just by his outward appearance, looking at his dress, looking at his followers, looking at his surroundings, the ashes and the bones and serpents around his neck, and they all present a very different look that is so different from the stereotype of a Vaishnava, right, that we commonly accept. But as enigmatic as Lord Shiva is, he is considered to be practically on the level of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in this material world. He is to be respected in, in every way, knowing that he is one of the greatest devotees of the Lord. Shiva is. And it is to our benefit to recognize that and be able to, respect him, offer our obeisances, and seek his help, seek his guidance, seek his blessing, so that we can serve Guru and Krishna better. So I know we're at time, a few minutes over, 1 minute over here. So at this time, I would like to conclude. There's much, much, much more. And if you really, really, really want to know more about, the pastime, the interesting and the enigmatic pastimes of Lord Shiva, it's all described very beautifully, very, very beautifully, very easy to read in the Skanda Purana. And Skanda Purana is one of the 18 Puranas. There's the Shiva Purana as well, which also talks about Shiva. And, the Skanda Purana specifically, talks about the glories of Shiva. And it's just one pastime after the other. It's all of these, all told in a story form. If you get a copy of that, I would encourage you to take a look, read it, and you will put things in perspective in terms of Lord Shiva's relationship to, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. With that, I'd like to see if there is any discussion, but otherwise, I'd like to end the class at this point. But I see a few folks who've joined the class, and thank you again for being in our discussion today. So anyone has any comments, anything that you would like to talk about, discuss further, or even correct some of the things that I've said?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
It sounds like
Welcome
Bhagavatam
from
is
India, a voice
pretty.
from India.
Oh, okay. Oh my God. It sounds like Bhagavatam is pretty enigmatic.
It is page after
And
page,
you're
verse
a,
after verse,
huh?
page after page, verse after verse.
Yeah. And your absorption in Lord Shiva is like so, like, I don't know, we say enthralling. It is like so soaking.
He is truly
Thank you
enigmatic,
for
Prabhu.
the,
Yeah,
thank
thank
you
you,
for
Prabhu.
the presentation, bro.
Sure, Prabhu. Thank you
Mm.
for bearing with me.
Hare Krishna, bro.
Very well. Any other comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prabhu. As Vanshidhari Prabhu said, I mean, it's like a complete absorption in the Lord Shiva's glories, especially the Daksha thing, right? So, I mean, it's from Bhagavatam also, that the same thing is given, right? How he offends Lord Shiva and those details. So, thank you so much. I mean, today being Gaura Purnima, if you want to share something, Prabhu, Lord Shiva and Gauranga Mahaprabhu's I think visiting the Lord Shiva temples or anything, would like to share something?
I wish I could. I wish I was in that frame of mind right now. I've been so absorbed in the Skanda Purana that I will admit that I've been rather too absorbed in the pastimes of Lord Shiva. I will leave it to perhaps yourself or even Vamsidhari Prabhu to maybe share something, from a Gaura Purnima perspective that would help me as well.
Something that is coming to my mind pretty quickly is Harihara. Uh, you have been mentioning Ardhangi, that one, but also have been mentioning that he is non-different from Hari. So Harihara Kshetra in Navadvip area. Mhm.
Thank you, Prabhu. Very nice.
Thank you. I mean,
Anything else?
yesterday we were discussing in the class, right? I mean, of course, this point it comes by looking at the externalities, right? One should not misunderstand. So, but yeah, I think the question that came was that, being the followers of, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we don't, do a lot of worship and all to Lord Shiva. But I think the scriptures glorify him so much. Even Bhagavatam, right? Bhagavatam itself does. I mean, I think in fourth canto or third canto, no, fourth or fifth canto, I think Lord Shiva, I mean, of course, many great personalities are called, but he himself is, he is called as Supreme Lord as well, right? Some places. I mean, of course, you also explained about the milk and yogurt. So he's, such a great personality. I mean, the way, one can easily misunderstand by looking at externalities, right? So if we do that, then it is a big problem, big offense.
Yes. Very true. And in fact, I was listening to Yamuna Jivan's class lecture yesterday as well. And I like the way, his response was, it's this caution involved because most people misunderstand Lord Shiva, right? And so that's also one of the reasons why Srimad Bhagavatam and in ISKCON and in the way we go about serving and doing our services, we try to stay away from mention to a point that it actually will further confuse people. I think it was with a good intention. It's not disrespecting Lord Shiva or diminishing his position in any way. It's just that for the common person, for the layman or the layperson or the novice, it would be very difficult for them to be able to reconcile. Lord Vishnu, Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu, Lord Shiva. So it becomes very confusing for them. So to keep it simple, get them first fixed in their devotional service, understand their constitutional position to the Supreme Personality, and then put in perspective all the other exalted personalities that are also striving to serve Krishna. Yes. I think that's the important piece. So I like that.
Yes, Prabhu. Even Lord Chaitanya visited, even Maharaj, I mean, Prabhupada Maharaj also takes us many places, right? I mean, Shiva places. I mean, he spoke on Lord Shiva on Shivaratri day. I mean, it's not that we don't worship. I mean, may not be directly as a TT form, but we glorify and.
That's right.
But, yeah.
And even the visit to the Gopishwara temple.
Yes.
Right? We can't forget.
Even
that.
Udupi Yatra. Yeah. Worship.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Awesome. Thank you, Prabhu. I know I went a few minutes over here.
Is there if she want to say something? Balram Prasad Prabhu dropped.
Is he?
Oh, he dropped, Prabhu. Kiran Mataji.
He dropped. Okay. All right, Prabhu. If there's nothing else, then I don't want to keep you all waiting. Happy Sunday, and hope you have a great Krishna conscious week. And Vamsidhari Prabhu, safe travels wherever you are. See you back soon. Hare Krishna, everyone. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo. Hare Krishna.
Happy Gauri Purnima to everyone. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Happy Gaura Purnima to everyone. Yes. Thank you. Hare Krishna.